This is the second part of this topic under mobile application architecture. In this video, I will be talking about dependency injection. So let's get started. So what we are going to learn today is about dependency injection. The agenda is first I will be introduce you what is it about this topic, and then we are going to look at several ways of doing dependency injection, starting from using the global approach and then constructor injection approach. The third one is inherited widget, by using inherited widget for dependency injection. And then finally, the fourth approach by using service locator approach. Okay, let's get started with the introduction to dependency injection. So what is it, and how what and why dependency injection. Okay, so what is dependency? Okay, dependency basically, as the name implies, it's something to do with one part of one entity relies on another on other entities. So since we are focusing our discussion here on our software development, the entity is about the code itself. So here we are talking about dependency on software, which is dependency is basically code or relies on other codes in order to achieve or in order to accomplish its task. Okay, so that one is dependency. So for example, okay, here I give you an example screen. So this the code here is the screen itself, the widget for this screen. So in order to build this screen, we need informations like the user, right? We need users information because we want to render the user profile here, the avatar and also the username. So user here is basically a dependency to the screen, okay, because this screen relies on this user. And we also need information about this. Here is about a to-do list. Okay, we need this information. Okay, a list of to-dos. And also we are going to perform operation on the to-do list. So in order to do that, we also need some dependencies. Okay, like in order to vote, then you need operation that acts or performs on the database. Okay, because whenever you do something on the data, you will also need to update your database. Okay, and that's all about dependency. Okay, code relies on other codes to accomplish certain tasks. Okay, so in this case, to render this screen. Then what is dependency injection? Okay, the keywords here is injection. So dependency injection basically how to supply or how to provide the dependencies to the requiring code. So for example, how we provide this user information, how we provide the list of to-dos, and then how we provide the service for doing the voting here, this like and dislike. So that one is dependency injection. Okay, yeah, in fact dependency injection is basically just a catchy name or a glorified name to indicate that how we provide the data, how we provide the dependencies. Okay, it can be data or it can be services. Okay, and in this video we are going to look at several approaches of provisioning the dependencies, starting from the global approach, and then we are going to look at the constructor way, and then inherited widget, and finally we are going to look at the last one, which is service locator. A service locator is basically the one that actually we are going to use later in our architecture. Okay, so now let's take a look at the first approach, how to provision or how to provide dependency by using global approach. So here I give you an example, another example application. Here is just a to-do list, or not, just now is about, I think this one is about post, right? I forgot this one is different application. Okay, but here we are going to use this from here onwards. We are going to use a to-do list as our example, our case study. Okay, so for example here, as you can see here, we have a screen, a single screen, and then in order to render or to build this screen, we need several dependencies, we need several information. So that means this screen requires some dependencies. So for example, dependency can be services or can be data, but most likely in this video we are going to talk more on dependency on services. Okay, but don't limit your understanding on dependency only on service. It can be any type of dependency. It can be data itself, it can be class, it can be object, it can be anything. Okay, but here since I'm using this example, the dependency required by this example is only service, which is the data service. In order for this UI to render the items or the UI here, okay, in order for the screen to render the UI here, to put the UI, it needs data service. Okay, so you may also need authentication, okay, in case you need to show user information and so on. But here we are not we don't have authentication service. Okay, just to give you some idea, just to give you an example, actually for dependency it can be more than one dependencies. Okay, you may also have other dependencies besides data service, authentication service. You can also have other dependencies like accessing local resources or accessing API and so on. Okay, so let's take a look dependency here. If you want to build this UI, then we need to, as you can see here, you may guess this UI consists of a scaffold, and then here is a list view, and then inside the list view we have list styles, right? And then each list style it has the data which is fetched from external resource. Okay, so in order to provide this data, we need dependency of the data. Okay, we require the data. Okay, and then that one will be handled by other parts of the code, which is the data service. Okay, so we can say that, okay, this screen depends on the, data service. It needs the list of to-dos, right? But the part that will be providing that to-dos is coming from a service, okay, which is here is the data service. So this list requires a data service dependencies, okay, in order to get a list of to-dos. Okay, then for each particular list style, let's say if because later on we have features for this to do. When you click on, then it will toggle the title, make it underline or make it a strike through, and vice versa. Or if you long press, and then it will be deleting it. Okay, so that process happen behind the scene. Okay, I mean the effect will be done behind the scene, which is handled by a service. Okay, so we need a service to do that, for deleting and also for toggling the title. Okay, so this part also depends on data service. Okay, and furthermore, the same goes to add. When you click on the add or plus button, we will be performing the addition of new to do. That one will be done outside of this application. Okay, you also need to update your database, and then this also requires dependency from this data service. Okay, so next we are going to look at how to implement this global approach. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention here, but as you can see here, the dependency coming from the global objects. Okay, here we are going to declare variable data service, but this data service actually a global variable, global object. Okay, so whenever a code requires this dependency, this code simply call to the object. Okay, a global. Okay, of course, global approach is not preferable in software development. Okay, if you can avoid this approach, you better to stay away from this approach. But I just want to show you here, there is an we have this approach. Okay, so we are going to look at a demo for this. Oh, by the way, if you want to refer the source code for all of the demo that I will be presenting here, I will be showcasing later, here and later, you can go ahead to this URL. You just clone from this my Git repo. Okay, by the way, the GitHub repo has several branches. Then you can navigate from one branch to another depending on the topic we are discussing here. So first of all, we start with the branch, the master branch, which is this branch is showing the implementation of dependency injection by using global approach. So here is let me walk you through about the code first. Okay, we have as usual, we have models. We are not going to touch anything on this model. We have screen. Okay, by the way, I think for this part I just walk you through. I'm not going to do live code here. I just simply using the one that I already provided before. Okay, this is the screen, the one that requiring the dependency. We can call this as consumer. Okay, because this screen requires from the dependency. So the dependency that we need here is actually to render this. Okay, because we have set up our screen to use feature builder. Okay, so let's go here. So in this case, the dependency is basically this one, this guy, the data service. Okay, we need this data service in order to allow this screen to utilize all the API from the data service to render the screen. So for example, to render the list of to-dos, then we need to call to get to-do list. Okay, now, but data service or to-do data service is actually entity from the outside. So how we bring this to this, so how we inject these dependencies. So let's take a look at I define this inside the service. Okay, by the way, this is actually not an ideal implementation because here we directly call the service from a view. Later on, we are not going to implement this way, but here in this case it's supposed to be fine because here we want to focus on dependency injection, how actually it works here. Okay, so we have a screen. I have provided here two types of services, but we limit our discussion only. I'm not going to talk yet this for the mockup one. I will be talking this later in, I think, in another example, in the next example. Okay, so this data coming from outside, right? This data, the to-do list, and then there is a part of our application that will be handling getting the data. That one, it is called data service. Particularly we call it to-do data service. To-do data service will be fetching data from the source, like from from the REST API. By the way, if you are trying to run this on your own machine, make sure you go to your REST service. Okay, I split this into two files, REST service. I believe you're familiar with this code because I have given you before, REST service. Make sure you specify your IP address here, your best URL based on your server. Here I am using JSON server. Then I need to specify my JSON server to listen on this IP address on this port. Okay, make sure if you are running on your own machine, make sure you check first your local IP address and then change this IP address accordingly. So I already run my JSON server. This is actually data coming from the JSON server. Okay, so I have run from my local machine here. Now, so I want to bring this because the screen needs this service. I want to inject this service into this screen. So the way I did here is just simply declaring a global variables. Okay, I declare a global variable. Now I have to do data service. Okay, and then since I declare this here, then whenever I need to consume this service or whenever I need to reference to this service, I just make sure I include the file, which is this to do data service.res. So for example, in my case, I need to use inside here. So it is under the screen, which is to do list screen. Okay, so I need to include this. Okay, once I include this, then I now have the reference to do data service, which is coming from the global variable here, this one. So whenever, let's say here, when I want to use future for the list here, okay, then I simply call the dependency, just reference the dependency. I don't have any problem here because we already include the import here. Okay, and then I simply call the function that handles to get the list of to-dos is get to-do list. I just call that here, and then all of the service, all of the functions inside the service normally are in form of future, so it's supposed to be comply with this one. Okay, that one for the to-do list. Then what if I click on or long press here, that those also requires dependency from to-do service. So let me show you what I mean here. So for example, on the tab, okay, on tab, when I tap this, something like, okay, as you can see here, when I tap on it will toggle the the title. Okay, so that one is from the user perspective, right? But you also need to update the database. That one also handled by the data service. So that means you also need data service dependency here. So as you can see here, what I did here, when I update, okay, I need here the same. I just call the global variable. Okay, whenever I need the dependency, I just call the global variables here. Okay, so this is how global variable approach is used for dependency. I think this one you are quite familiar with it, okay, because you are exposed on this approach in PT1 and PTU. But as I mentioned earlier on, it's not really advisable to use global variables in your code, because it's not what we call a testing friendly. Okay, if you have so many, if you utilize so many global variables, you referencing global variables, you might be ending up with what we call spaghetti program. So it's a good idea to avoid using global variable. But some case, if you use it in a more organized manner, it's supposed to be fine. Okay, we are going to actually later on in the last approach, we are going to use this, but in a more organized way. Okay, but the idea here is that you provision the dependency by simply using global variables. So again, if I want to use, if I need to long press here, right? The long press also need dependency. Just simply use that one to do data service. And for the plus button, where is it? My plus button, I think under the this one. Okay, the plus button also need dependency. Okay, but here we use global variables. Okay, next let's move on to the second approach for doing dependency injection, which is constructor dependency injection. Okay, so we are going to use the same use case, the same case study here, which is my to-do list. Okay, here the way we inject or the way we provision the dependency is indeed by using the by supplying it through parameters. Okay, although you don't learn this from this video, I believe you are familiar with this approach. Okay, this is actually from, if you learn from PT1, PT2, this is actually parameter passing. Okay, the working principle is the same. Okay, when you want to supply information to particular function, then you pass by parameter. Okay, but here in Flutter, because we are dealing with widget, so you have main widget. Like in this case, you have so many widgets, right? You have starting from material app, you have screen widget, and then you have to-do list, and then list style. You have a list view, list style, all those are widgets. But here we inject this dependency from the main widget, the main screen widget, from the screen widget. In this case is the to-do list screen. Okay, how we inject that? We declare a variable or attribute in the screen. Okay, I will show you that later in the example. Okay, so whenever part of your code, part of this screen, whenever a widget or part of part of your code requires the dependency, you are basically referencing locally. Okay, we reference to local reference, which is from the class itself. Okay, unlike the global, just now the global, the dependency is coming from outside. Okay, and for this one, we reference the dependency locally inside the class itself. Okay, so for example, for the get to do list, so you refer just from the inside. Okay, the same goes for the list style. You refer locally from the same class, and then also for the button, the same. Okay, so that means here we just assume, okay, the way you work on parameter passing is basically you don't know yet actually the actual data here. That's why we call it sometimes we call it formal parameters, right? We only assume, okay, later on this widget or this screen will be receiving a data service. We just provide that placeholder for the data service. What we don't know yet the actual data service that will be plugged into here. Okay, so later on when you start using this screen, okay, let's say you call it from the main function or the main dot, okay, then you can start injecting the actual data. Okay, you just inject the data, and then you don't have to worry about the consumer here. Okay, because they are all referencing this one. So our job from the outside, we just supply the actual data for the data service. So for example, in this case, I can inject the actual REST data service, something like this. Or maybe I can simply change this with mockup data service. Mock data service basically data that you generate internally. So for example, the data is coming from the list from the program itself, hard-coded one, okay, rather than accessing from like JSON server or any other REST API server. Okay, we just change this without changing the code inside the main screen. This is actually a good approach, whereby by having this we can achieve what we call a loosely coupled code, whereby the data here doesn't rely on the actual data here. Okay, you can simply swap the data without changing so much code. Okay, in fact, for this one you don't have to change your code for the main screen. Okay, for the screen itself. Okay, so let's take a look some what we call that, some important notes regarding this approach. So for this approach, it works very well if you are using shallow widget tree. If you let's say for this case, let's say you put everything inside a screen, even this one button, okay, even though it is a different widget, but you build the widget inside the class screen widget, whereby this screen widget actually the one that holds this data service. We are very fine to use this approach, because all these widgets can have reference to this to data service, okay, the dependencies, okay, because they are all in the same class. So if a widget is built inside the parent widget, which is this one, the screen widget, the one that holds this data service, there shouldn't be any problem accessing the dependency. It makes sense, right? Because we are in the same scope. Okay. However, we have problem when if a widget is defined in different class. Okay, I believe I have an example for this. Okay, I will be showing you first using this button, and then later on we are going to split this button, make it another class. So if a widget is defined in different class from the parent class, now the widget class now no longer have access to data service, right? So the only way to provide dependency, to inject dependency for the child class is basically you carry forward. Okay, you forward the dependency again using the same approach, constructor injection. Okay, we are going to see that this example later. So that's why this approach is not really suitable if you have if you define your screen in different classes and then you have a you have depth widget trees, because if you are in that situation, you keep passing or keep forwarding the dependency from the parent to the children, and then you will end up with what we call more boilerplate code. Okay, because you just want to consume or just the reference of the dependencies, but you need to have extra code just to pass the dependencies. Okay, so I hope I can show you that later here. Okay, let's take a look the demo. Okay, now okay, now here we are still in the global approach. I'm going to switch to the constructor injection. Okay, the constructor injection. Okay, so let me show you what has changed here. Okay, here this is this part is basically to show you this part, this one. Okay, we provide the placeholder to receive the dependency. Okay, why we need this? Because later on the children, okay, in order to allow these children do their work, because they need dependency, that's why we need provide dependency. Some sort of like just reference, okay, a formal approach, a formal way. Okay, here we don't know the actual dependency yet. It's just okay, later on we are going to receive the dependency of data service. Okay, we are going to receive a data service, and then the way you allow outside to send the dependency to this screen is by using constructor parameters. So this is what we call constructor injection. We provision the dependencies by using the constructor parameters. Okay, so then when I want to refer to so for example this one, to-do list, right? So because this is stateful widget. Okay, because we store the data service inside the screen, not the state, but we need to write our bool inside the state class. That's why we need this one, right? Widget. This is how you access. Okay, as you can see here, for stateful widget you have two classes, right? The first one is the class itself, which is the screen, and then you also have the state class. Okay, this one, the state class, and then the bool is inside the state class. But we need the service. The service must be here because this is the outside will reference to the screen by the screen, not the state. So that's why we must put the dependency reference here. So then we need to refer to the one by using this is the internal variable provided automatically by Flutter to reference the attribute from the class, the stateful widget. Okay, one, and then if we want to the rest is the same. Okay, let's say for the other part, something like this, up to we need this data service, right? So again, this one is coming from here. We reference internally. Okay, we don't have any problem to reference this because okay, although list style, all of these widgets different widget, but still we are defining or we are building them in the same class, so we don't have any problem to reference the dependencies. So that means actually we are putting them in the same level of scope. Okay, something like that. Okay, this should be working. So again, the same, the rest is the same. We are referencing to the same internally. So now how to, this is, we are up to this point we are talking about only inside this screen. Okay, it shouldn't be a problem, right? Because we reference to the locally. Then how we provision the actual data, the actual data service here. Okay, so in this case I believe I call this from, yeah, we call this from the main screen, the main program. Okay, so just now because we have provide the placeholder, okay, for the data service, and then this is the place that you inject the actual service. So for example, let's say I'm currently, this is running on the REST data service. So the REST data service, you plug in something like that. And then if I want to replace this with the mockup data service, I already provide this. Okay, mockup and REST, they both are the same, both have the same signature, I mean the same functions, the same APIs. The only difference is the implementation, because for mock, all data is coming from the internally, okay, hard-coded one from the program. I will be showing you that later. Okay, let's try this out first. This is, then I need to change this to mock. Okay, okay, and then if I run this, okay, if I run this, okay, I need to pause. Now this is now currently running on mockup data. So let's take a look what is inside mock and the rest. So for mock data, we simply actually use internal data here, hard-coded one. Okay, we don't access directly to the any outside service. Okay, I'm not going to walk you through all this. So if you are interested to see the code, then you go ahead, look at the Git repo. Okay, so but the mock and the rest, they are having the same signature. They having the same function, like get to do list, okay, and create to do, update to do. If you go to the rest, okay, the only difference with rest is using actual REST service. Okay, it is calling to the actual REST service, but in this case we are using the JSON server. Okay, so but the list of functions are the same. In fact, you must use the same as the same signature. And then of course, actually this one is not the ideal implementation. Why? Because actually in order to implement to do data service mock and to do data service REST, you are actually needing another class, which is an abstract class. Okay, but here just want to show you the idea of this one. Okay, so we plug in, we can simply swap the data service here without having changes to the consumer code. Okay, okay, next I want to show you what if we have okay, what if we have child widget that outside of the class. Okay, for this currently the implementation, all the widgets here like the button, list view, list style, all of them are in the same class. Okay, which is in the same to-do list screen. So we have no problem accessing this dependency data service because we are in the same scope. But what if, let's say, you have widget that outside of the class? So let's take a look. Okay, I have provided the example here. We go here. Okay, we check out that one. So let me, I hope I can show you from here. Okay, let's take a look. I have my code. Actually, what I did, I refactor this, which is this plus button, and refactor it to a new class. Okay, a dedicated class. Okay, so just to show you what happened if we remove this class, not in the same scope with the screen class. So I believe I have here, let me check this first. Where is it? I believe, yeah, this one. Okay, just now this is a floating action button, but now I create a add to do button. This is a new class, which is this class. Okay, let us this is a new class. Now, so as you can see here, okay, because I want to shorten this video. I'm not going to talk much on this part because I'm going to talk more on the service locator. So now so for now I just walk you through here. I'm not going to do like coding for this part. So since we refactor this plus button outside to a dedicated class, now the button has no access to attribute from the screen. Okay, it makes sense, right? I hope you got my point here. You're familiar with the concept of encapsulation. Okay, so in that case, because this plus button still needs data service, right? Because if you click on the plus button, you need to update the database. So in order to do that, you need to reference the data service. But data service is injected to the screen. So what this screen needs to do is basically to forward the dependency to this widget when this widget is created. So the same approach we are going to do that to apply for this when we define this class. We are going to use constructor injection. Okay, so for example here we provide the constructor the constructor parameter, the parameter here, data service, just placeholder, so that later on the parent can inject the constructor or can forward the dependency when we instantiate the object, the add button. And then by the way, as you can see here, I also added some other dependencies, but this dependency is only coming from the screen, not from the outside. Okay, because later on here, inside here, we need to have something like set state, right? Set state belongs to the state here, so we need the state object. So that's why I need to pass the state from the screen, and also to do's, just to satisfy this part. But the things that we need to you need to take a look here is this data service. Okay, data service is actually coming from the outside, and then the outside will be will inject from the constructor parameter of the parent, and then the way you want to forward from parent to this widget is again the same, using constructor injection. Something like, where is it? Not here. Okay, this one. Okay, this is, as you can see here, because add to button is now a different class, so we need to provision the dependency of data service by constructor injection. But if you use create button here by using refactor to a method, which means the function is still inside the same class, you don't have to inject, because the function can still access to the class, okay, the screen class, because they are still in the same scope. But in this case, just want to show you, if this is a different class, then you need to inject by constructor injection, something like this. So this is actually the reason, one of the drawback of using constructor injection. Okay, what if you have another subchild, and then again, in order to pass the dependency, you keep using constructor injection. So that's why this approach, constructor injection, is suitable only if you have very shallow widget tree. Okay, but if you have a depth tree, depth widget tree, then I think this is not the best option for you. Okay, so you need to use different different approach of dependency injection. Okay, then the third approach of dependency injections in Flutter is using the inherited widget. So let's take a look. So okay, so basically inherited widget works almost similar to constructor injection. I mean, in terms of scope access. Because constructor injection, you are accessing in local scope, which is all dependencies you are referencing from the same class. Okay, so inherited widget is actually sort of like local approach. You are referencing dependency from some sort of like local access, but instead of local, literally local, you learn from global versus local scope. This is what I mean local here, you are referencing from the same tree. Okay, And in fact, inherited widget is try to fix problem in constructor injection, whereby in constructor injection just now we saw that it's not really suitable if you are dealing with a depth widget tree, right? So in here in inherited widget, it tries to fix that. Okay, so let's take a look the principle of inherited widget. So here we have two diagrams. The left side we have the user interface that is constructed, and then the right side is the structures tree or the widget tree representing the UI. Okay, so the way inherited widget works is basically you inject, you wrap your application. It can be application, you can also wrap simply just a screen, or here we wrap our application entirely in a specific widget called inherited widget. Okay, and then of course you need to create, here we are going to actually to create we are going to extend an inherited widget, and then we are going to call our class with what we call to do inherited widget. But the idea here is that we create a new widget here. Okay, so and then we place our dependency on the newly created widget. Just now actually we put our dependency here in the screen itself, but here we wrap it, and then we create a new class, a new widget which is of type inherited widget, and then we put our dependency placeholder over there. Okay, by the way, you can actually you don't necessarily to put your inherited widget on top. You can also actually put here, okay, depending, but for simplicity we are putting here. So the idea of inherited widget is basically all the widget underneath here, all widget within the tree, they have the capability of accessing this widget. Okay, so for example, okay, if we want for this class for the plus button, okay, because later on we need to have data service, the plus button can access to this data service. How to do that? First of all, we need to access the inherited widget. Then inside, once we get the reference of the inherited widget, then we can access the attribute from the inherited widget. In this case is the data service. Okay, again, also for this list style, we will be doing the same, accessing to the data service by first accessing the inherited widget. So that's why just now I mentioned inherited widget and constructor injection. In terms of scoping, they are actually almost the same, because we are accessing the same we are accessing locally the dependency we are accessing locally, but here the dependency is from the tree. Okay, we are accessing in terms of tree, okay, by accessing the tree, the root, the parent of the tree. So okay, let's take a look some important notes regarding this approach. So this approach is basically to solve the problem faced by constructor dependency injection when dealing with a depth widget tree. So as you can see here, it doesn't matter if you have very depth tree here, because you don't have to pass data. If you are using constructor dependency injection, let's say you pass your injection dependency here, and then if you want to give the dependency to the plus button, what you need to do, this guy needs to pass to material app needs to pass to to-do list by using constructor injection, and again to scaffold, and finally to plus button. That's why we call, you will be introducing more boilerplate code, okay, unnecessary code. You just because you just the reference for data service, you need to do a lot of things. That's the problem with constructor dependency injections. So in inherited widget, it solves by, you don't pass something like that, but you simply from the consumer here, like the last plus button, it can access directly to the dependency by, first of all, try to reference the inherited widget, and then once we get that inherited widget, then we can take advantage what inside the inherited widget, like to take the data service from the inherited widget. Okay, so inherited widget is trying to solve the problem of constructor dependency injection in terms of dealing with that widget tree. Okay, so the key principle of inherited widget, all child widgets under the tree are able to access the dependencies in the top widget here. Okay, the way we do it, actually, we first need to reference to find the inherited widget here, and then once we get that, and then we can take advantage what is inside the inherited widget. Okay, so now the question, how actually the consumer referencing this inherited widget. Okay, so the answer is that very simple, because this is coming from the Flutter framework itself. Flutter framework itself, inside this inherited widget, there is a method that we can make a special method called off. Okay, this is actually is meant for this purpose. Okay, for allowing the widget access the parent. Okay, because we learn, I had mentioned in our early lecture regarding the Flutter framework. Flutter framework is a declarative UI, whereby it is actually a one-way approach. You don't use like in Java, whereby if you want to get this in Java by using imperative approach, you just simply go to do inherited and then you dot, right? But that's not how Flutter works. How Flutter is declarative UI. So but still it provide us some features that looks like the imperative approach. Okay, and then the way it provide us is by using this method. Okay, so if plus button or any of this object requires something from the above, then you use dot off. But keep in mind, dot off only works on inherited widget, and then not all the widgets here is are inherited widget. Okay, so in order to allow you to use this, to make this works, you must have inherited widget. So the way you want to do it, whether you use the existing one or you extend from inherited widget. So we are going to do that later in the demo. Okay, so this is an example. Okay, this is an example how the consumer code here get the dependency. So like in the plus button, let's say you are inside the plus button, and then you can write this one. Okay, let's say you store the variable into data service. Okay, so this is the syntax that you need to do. First of all, you need to reference this guy. How to do that? This is the syntax. You must specify the first one, again this one. Okay, remember this is not an object, but this is a class. Okay, and then it must be an inherited widget. Okay, because we want to use .off. So what does this line do is basically, okay, climb up. It will climb up to find the first to do inherited widget. It goes here, then it will give us this object, but we reference this object by using the class. So if you have more than one to do inherited widget, it will give you the first one. I believe so. It will give you the first one. Okay, so once you get the object from here, then now you can take advantage what is inside from the object. Like here we have data service, assuming we have an attribute inside to do inherited widget, we call data service. Okay, so okay, I will be showing you the demo later, but let's take a look some other notes regarding this approach. In fact, using the .off is actually the common approach used in Flutter framework. Okay, I believe you're familiar with this navigator.off context.push, and in fact last time I was giving you this question: what is the purpose of calling navigator.off? This is basically the same for this one. This is only to get the dependency. Okay, this is actually the way we want to do, like imperative approach, go to the object to go to the object. Okay, but we do it in a Flutter way. Okay, because Flutter is declarative, right? Okay, it's not an imperative approach. So by having navigator.off, basically, let's say you write this code inside your floating action button. Okay, you do it over there. Then you write this command. So what happened basically, from the context, which is your current, the context normally provide information about the current build of your UI. So it basically, when you use .off, that part will climb up and then try to find what you specify here in front. Just now we specify navigator. Okay, so it climbs up until it finds Flutter, until Flutter finds navigator. Navigator basically under the material app. Okay, so when it finds that, then it gives you the object for that particular class. Okay, then again, .off only applicable to inherited widget. So navigator is actually as a kind of inherited widget. It's a child class of inherited widget. Can you also have this media query.off? This is the same. You go on top to get the information about your media query. Okay, you have this theme.off when you want to use theming, like in order to get your centralized sort of like CSS, your theme information. You climb up to your material app to get the theme.off. Scaffolder.off, okay, again the same. And then scaffolder.off if you want to open drawer, if you want to open snack bar. And then there is another one I forgot to mention here, which is like provider.off. Provider.off, later on we are going to learn about provider. Provider also can have this kind of syntax whereby you, from a consumer code, you climb up until Flutter finds a provider.off. Okay, so we are going to take a look, a demo regarding inherited widget dependency injection. So let's switch on this. Okay, we are going to check on where is it. I think that one is inherited injection. Okay, okay, let's take a look what we have here. Inherited injection. Okay, for this one, for this approach, because we need this one. Okay, let me go back here. Okay, we need to have this one. Okay, we need to prepare a special widget here, which is inherited widget. So in order to do that, we are going to extend inherited widget, and then we are going to define our new widget. We call and then we are going here I'm going to call it to do inherited widget. So in order to do that, so we here I create a class. I call it to do inherited widget. Okay, in fact there is a scaffold, there is a snippet for creating this. I believe you can inherited, I hope my intelligence can pick up. Yeah, you can choose this inherited widget for the snippet. Okay, I have done that here. So basically this one for inherited widget. Okay, okay, for now I got this message, but for now we just ignore it. Okay, it should be fine. Okay, this is deprecated. Okay, it says deprecated, it should be fine. Okay, so here this is basically why we need to declare inherited widget, because later on we want to use this dot off. Dot off can only be used on inherited widget. But why we need to extend this? Because we want to plug in this. No, this one. We want to associate it with data service. Okay, because by original inherited widget doesn't provide us how to associate data service, how to attach data service over there. Okay, so that's why we create a new class by extending the inherited widget. Okay, you shouldn't do much actually here. We simply need to have this. Okay, and in this case, as you can see here, I don't plug in, as you can see for my example here, all dependency. I can, yeah, you can plug, you can provide the placeholder. Data service can only be placeholder here, and then later on you can plug in from the outside for the actual data service. Okay, but in this case I directly create the data service here inside. So here I'm using the mock, but if I want to change this to the rest, so as usual I simply change this to rest, and then I also need to change here. Okay, of course this is not actually the ideal way of doing this. You don't do something like this. Actually you need to use constructor injection for this one. Okay, but I'm going to use different approach later, but for now it should be working for this case. Okay, I just want to show you here we provision the injection directly inside the inherited widget. So if I run this, okay, now we have data fetched directly from the JSON server. Okay, from the JSON server, from the REST. Okay, so this is actually how you Oh, I forgot one more thing regarding how the consumer access. How the consumer access. Just now I just show you how to provision the dependency by directly inject in here in the inherited widget. So now how this consumer, like the plus button, the list style, access to the dependency. So let's go here. Okay, I believe I don't okay, where is it? I think okay, you see here, because we need to get to-do list, right? And then the get to-do list is inside the to-do in data service. So we have this dependency, but now our dependency is not from the screen. Our dependency, just now I was showing you this part, this screen. Okay, but now our dependency is not from here, but it's from here. So how do we access this? Okay, that's how here, this one, to the service, I declare a variable here, and then this is the key point. Okay, this is how we ask Flutter to climb up the tree, go find whatever you mention here. Okay, climb up the tree until you find to do inherited widget. Once you get that, then it gives you the object that is currently created for this class. Okay, because we know that this class is to do inherited widget, then it has data service. Okay, this is the key player of this approach. You climb up by using, okay, and then again you must, this one in front here, it is must an inherited widget. Okay, how about the rest? So the rest, the same go for the rest, right here. To do, because we already, because okay, for this case, okay, here, this one, right? In order to tap, for doing tap here, we need data service, right? This one. So how do we get? We are doing the same here. Okay, every time, of course, this is actually not the ideal one, but it's just to show you, every time you want to access the dependency, you climb up. Okay, unless you cache, you have a dedicated code here, some part of your class to do this. Maybe you can use a getter for this one. Okay, every time you call to do data service, then it will be doing this part. But the idea here is that every time you want to consume you want to use the dependency, you climb up to get the inherited widget. Okay, we also use this on long press. This is for the update for the on long press. The same goes for the on long press. Okay, we climb up by using .off method. Okay, and then for the to the button, as you can see here now, for to the button, as the add to do button. Okay, in previous example, I have shown you, in order to pass the data service from the screen to the button, you need to do constructor injection here, right? But as you can see here, I don't use any constructor injection for the service, data service. But the rest is I remain the same, okay, because it's not our intention to focus on this the rest attribute, the rest data here, but we want to focus on the data service. Okay, now we don't supply the data service via the constructor injection, but instead the data service is using the same approach, climb up. Okay, you don't have to this is actually reduce the boilerplate of injecting dependencies from parent to child by using constructor injection. Okay, but here we simply, whenever the consumer needs the dependency, you simply climb up, get the inherited widget. Okay, you specify what inherited widget you want to use, you want to fetch, or you want to reference. Then after that, once you get this up to this point, it will give you the object of this inherited widget, and then you can manipulate from there. You can take advantage like to get what this object offers, okay, like the data service and so on. Okay, so that's how you use inherited widget as a dependency injection. Okay, so yeah, we have seen how to use inherited widget. Okay, next will be service locator dependency injection, but I think I need to take a break for now. I will be continuing this video later. Okay, so I will continue the video. So the last approach of dependency injection that I will be showing you in this video is service locator. Okay, so let's take a look what it is all about. Service locator is basically works based on a global approach like the one that I showed you in the beginning. Okay. However, here we are going to implement this approach, global approach, but in a control manner. Okay, so what I mean by a control manner here is that by the way, service locator is actually a kind of a design pattern. Okay, when you look at samples of design pattern, so you can see service locator. Service locator is under behavioral design pattern, which is to I believe this one is under creational. Okay, it can be under creational design pattern because it serves for the how you get your object or your instance. Okay, so just now I mentioned about service locator is works on the global approach principle. However, we are going to implement the global approach in a control manner. Here, what I mean here is that one of what I mean about the in control manner is you unlike a regular global, you put your global everywhere. Okay, you may put your global variables everywhere in a file, one file A or file B, and then you just, because the variables are globals, you can access them also from anywhere. However, for service locator, we centralize our reference dependency into a central registry called a service locator. Okay, so we are going to do that in this approach. So let's take a look how this dependency injection approach works. So we will centralize the dependency in a central place called service locator, so we can have our dependencies there. Like here, I just give you an example. We want to have data service, authentication service, or other dependencies. Again, don't limit your understanding on dependencies to only what I show here, because here I think from the beginning of this video, dependency I'm talking here is more on services, but you also have dependencies on data or maybe on object or on class. So don't limit your understanding on that. But in this video, I tend to use services as dependencies. Okay. Okay, so let's proceed. So we hold all the dependencies in one central place, which is in the service locator here. Okay, we put here. So that means later on we need to have a dedicated code for this part, okay, or maybe the dedicated file for this part. And then consumer code access the dependency via the service locator. So I keep repeating, use the same service locator, but basically you, in order, let's say if you want to access to this, you need to go through service locator. Unlike global variables, if you want to access data service, you just simply access the variables in data service. Okay, but here you need to go through the service locator. Okay, so this is an example. Let's say here, let's say one part of your code, like in the plus button. If you want to access the data service, so then this is the way you do it. Okay, service locator, you just mention, assuming we have this variable, later on we are going to declare a variable, service locator, and then just empty parenthesis because this is a callable function. And then you need to identify, because the idea of this service locator is we ask the service locator to locate for us the service that we want, but we need to tell the service locator which service that you want from me. Okay, how you tell the service locator which service, because you have service locator can encapsulate or can hold several services, right? So the way service locator works is basically based on type. So you need to tell the service locator, if you want to use this service, then you provide the type. This is one example how this service locator is this service locator knows that you need this type. You are defining this variable of type data service. Okay, so that means when you call to service locator will infer the type of this data service. Okay, and then it will try to find the service based on the type. There is another way actually. This is we use from here. You can also use generic. Later on, I believe I will be showing you that later in the demo. Okay, let's say if you want to access authentication service, then you need to declare a service which is of type that particular class. Okay, so this is the syntax if you want to access dependencies via the service locator. You just specify what service you need by declaring the type of the service, and then let the service locator infer the type, and then it will find for the service, okay, based on the type. Okay, then we can start access as usual. Once you get the service, the dependencies, then you can consume the service. Okay, use for whatever reason in the code. Okay, so something like this. This is actually this arrow is doing here. Is doing something like this. Okay, give me data service. The way you ask the service locator, give me data service, is something like this. Okay. Okay, the same goes to this. It will be doing the same syntax, and also because all three of them are accessing to the same service, same dependencies, which is data service. Okay, so as I mentioned just now, service locator is actually a design pattern. Okay, it's also a common design pattern used to organize your code. Okay, by centralizing the dependencies into one central place, okay, which is we call service locator. So in Flutter, there are several packages that can be used for this approach. So in this video and also in our actual architecture, we will be using this package get it. Okay, this is served nicely. It serves very well for this design pattern. Okay, so we are going to, so in order this is third party one, then that means you need to install it. So okay, before we start do the demo, let's take a look some important notes regarding this package. Okay, this package provides us the several ways of do the registration for dependency injection. Okay, there are actually at least 3 types. The first one is the factory. Okay, okay, as you can see here, because we know that service locator, right? Service locator is holding all the dependencies. In order to tell the service locator hold that, you need to register the service that you want this service locator to handle. Okay, so this is what I mean by this one. There are different ways of the registration. You need to register. So for example, a factory registration. Okay, when you register the service as factory with factory registration, it means later on, whenever you consume, let's say when you want to, whenever the consumer code use this syntax, use this command, the service locator, okay, because this command is actually to ask the service locator, okay, service locator, please give me a data service. Okay, so if you register this data service as factory, so every time you call this, it always, which is the service locator, always give us a new instance. That means it's a regular object. The one that you are familiar when you instantiate an object from a class, you always get a new object, right? So this is actually factory, yeah, a factory registration. There is another one which is singleton. I believe you know this concept already because I have introduced this in our backend service last time. So singleton, okay, when you register a service as singleton, that means every time the consumer requests the service, something like this one, the service locator always give us the same instance. That means the instance is only created only once, okay, which is the first time we call to the instantiation process. Okay, a singleton, you learn, right? Singleton is a design pattern whereby an object, a class create only a single object throughout the life time of the class. Okay, so in fact, in our example, okay, we are going to this approach. Okay, just now I was talking about dependency, right? You don't limit your understanding dependency only the service, since I show here just services. Dependency can also be data and object and so on. Okay, but most likely in our approach later, we most likely to implement services. So I prefer my service hold only operation. A service doesn't need to hold any state. Okay, so because the operation it shouldn't be it shouldn't have multiple copies, right? The operation is always the same. That's why I prefer for my services to be registered as singleton. So most likely we are going to use most this registration, which is singleton. Okay. And then there is another variation of singleton provided by Gedit, which is lazy singleton. Okay, lazy singleton is the same as the second one, which is a singleton. However, the only difference, the third one with the second one is the lazy singleton doesn't register doesn't create an instant. I believe okay, here I think it's not really correct here, except it's not about registration, but it is about instantiation. So when you call to when you register a dependency as lazy singleton, the instance for that class is not created immediately. Okay, that one is happen to singleton when once you register in the service locator, the instance has been created immediately, regardless there are consumers for the singleton. But for lazy singleton, no, the instance is only created for the first time. It is a request by the consumer. So I would recommend to use this one, the last one, lazy singleton. Okay, why is that? Because because registration, normally you will be doing the registration of these services at the beginning of the application. So if you don't want to interrupt your startup loading of the application, so it's a good idea to have lazy singleton, because for during startup, if you use singleton, besides starting up the app, it's your application also start creating objects for all the singleton class. So we don't want that. So what we want to do is we only want the object for the first time we call to the service. So we are going to I believe in this demo later I'm going to use this one, lazy singleton, rather than the first two. But I will I hope I have examples to show you some of the use cases of the also for the factory. Okay, so okay, now we are going to I'm going to show you demo about the service locator dependency injection. So in this case, maybe I'm going to take some time to show you this instead of walking you through this part. I will be doing live coding for this one. So let's go ahead. So this is the one that we have just now. So I need to prepare the code base. So what I'm going to do here, actually I already have actually the branch for this. You can go to I believe I have here. Yeah, it's under service locator. Yeah, service locator. Okay, I already have service locator, but this is the finish or the complete version. So I think it's better for us to get started from the beginning. So I'm going to base my demo from the global approach, which is the one that I showed in the beginning, So in that case, I'm going to go to the master one, which is here, and then create a new branch from there, which is we are going to call it let me call it demo service locator demo, because I already have service locator here, so I need to create a new one. What is that? Oh, okay, because I didn't. Okay, I need to undo the changes, so then create a new one. Okay, now I have created the base code, okay, for the demo. This might be taking some time as well as usual, so I hope you can bear with me. Okay. Okay, first of all, because we are going to use gedit, okay, for the service locator part. Okay, so let me get rid of all of this. We are going to use gedit. Okay, now so you need to install gedit, because gedit is a third-party one. Okay, so I believe I already introduced a convenient extension in VS Code for installing, make it installation package much easier. Okay, you can use this. I already have installed. Actually, you can. I believe I have. You install this. Pub. I think I pub assist. Do I have? Yeah. You install this package. Okay. Pub spec assist. So that every time you want to install or you want to install package, you don't have to go to pub spec YAML manually. Okay. It's like here. What you want to do, because I already installed in my machine here. So what I can do, I just go to Ctrl+Shift+P and then try to here click on pub spec assist, and then you type what package you want to install, and then you proceed. Because I already installed in this, I don't have to do it again. So you don't have to go manually, you don't have to touch the pub spec YAML manually as you might be doing up to this point. Okay, so it's a good idea to install this extension pub spec. Okay. Okay, I think there is another extension you might be interested in, which is in this case is dot import. Okay, dot import, which is not really related actually for this one, but let me check. Yeah, dot import. Okay, so this what this extension does is basically it help us to create a relative path. So for example, okay, something like I don't have in here, maybe here. Okay, something like this. Otherwise, normally when you start, because when you import, right, when you import if you have broken dependency here, normally the extension will suggest you to put, right, and then it gives you this bulb. And then if you don't that import, normally you have something like this, the absolute path. I don't like this one, something like this. I don't like. I prefer to use relative, something like this one. So when you use the dot import, I believe it gives you two options. One is the original one. The second one is the relative one. Okay. So so it's up to you which one you want to choose. So normally I prefer to choose this relative. Why is that? Because later on, if I want to copy this and then I want to rename this, if I use the absolute one, so the name, like just last time, if I copy this from exercise 3, then exercise 3 is still here. But now the file is not exercise 3, but this file is architecture dependency. So it's a good idea to have relative reference. Okay, that's just a side note. Okay, let's go back to our service locator. Okay, for the service locator, let's take a look back. Okay, we need to centralize. Okay, the idea of service locator, you need central registry. Okay, so I'm going to declare create a new file for this, and then instead of calling it service locator, it's up to you what the name you want to refer to this, but as long as you know the purpose, you can call it like service locator or dot or services dot or not. Service, I don't think so. Service is a good name because you are going to use services for other purpose. Maybe you can call it service container dot injection container dot or dependency injection dot. But in my case, I want to call this as dependencies. Okay, so I'm going to create here under leave the same label as main. Okay, I'm going to create here, I'm going to call it dependencies dot. Okay, so what I'm going to do here, actually I want to register all my dependencies. Okay, all my dependencies, but for now we only have this data service, right? We don't have the authentication. We don't use authentication on other services here in this application. Okay, how to do that? Okay, first of all, we need to include the package, which is we need to import okay, I think it's better. Okay, package dot get it dot okay, this is the package we are going to use here. Is the package why is that? Oh, do I have this? Let me check. Oh yeah, I believe I don't have this, right? So I need to install it first. So which is this one. I mistakenly I thought I was in the finished product, but this is actually we start from scratch from the global approach, right? So I use my PubSpec assist to get the PubSpec. Okay, so it will take some time to download from the package, and then while waiting for pub-get to complete, then we can continue here. Okay, so here later on we have the package, and then we can access the class. Okay, this is, and then okay, then okay, I can start now. I can start register all my services here. Okay, so in order to do that, I will create just a function. You can call this function whatever you like here. I prefer, you can use setup dependency or initialize. Okay, I just use init here. So this is the common convention steps when you use a get-it. Okay, you need to have centralized location to register everything. So here you can start register all dependencies you are using in your application. So for example, maybe you can start off with, okay, data service. Let's say we are working on Firebase, right? So Firebase, maybe you want to register your Firestore dependencies, okay, and then you have authentication dependencies. Maybe you also need to register your cloud storage, okay. Maybe if you also have use something like local resource, maybe the camera dependency, okay, local resource, okay, like, so for example, share preference, okay, this is the one that used in Android for whatever, okay. So you can prepare all, you can register all the dependency that you are using in your app, okay. So just to give you an idea, okay. But for our example, for our application, okay, we just need to have, here is actually only for the data service, okay. So I'm going to register my data service here. So how do I register that? Okay, so I can call it get it, which is get it is from this get it, and then we use the instance, and then now just now I was mentioning regarding the different types of registration, right? So we have a register factory, we have registers lazy singleton, and so on and so forth. At least we have 3 types. So in this case, because I want to register this service, okay, I want to register data service, and then the service, in my case, normally I will be using lazy singleton, okay, a singleton, and then particularly lazy singleton, okay. So I will register this, okay, what I want to register, okay. I want to register which is to do, okay, I already have this, what we have here, to do data service. Let's say we use the rest, to do data service rest, okay. Then of course I need to import, okay. This is just now I was mentioning regarding that import. If you have that import, you're supposed to be getting 2 options, the local one and also the absolute one, okay, the relative one and absolute one. I'm going to use the relative, okay. Okay, now the screen is not too large, okay. To do rest, no, sorry, I believe we are importing different class. Okay, let me double check here. Yeah, this is supposed to this one, okay. Done. To do data y is still okay, because yeah, we need to do it something like that, okay. Oh, I forgot, do we need to have return? The return type to do isn't a future. Okay, let me take a look what is going on here. Okay, my bad. It's not a sync because each method comes with 2 versions. One is for synchronous and the other one is for asynchronous. Use the synchronous version, this one. So that's why just now I was given an error, okay. So this is how you register, okay. This is one registration for this particular particular service, okay. I can also register. If you want to register for other service, then you can keep continuing. Okay, like register whatever you want to register here. Okay, whatever object or class, okay, you want to register. Okay, so by convention, normally we don't use this name. We want to use a shorthand. So in order to do that, I'm going to declare I just want to replace this one, because later on, actually inside the consumer code, you also need to call this, because this one is to register, but to allow your consumer code to get the service or to get the dependency, the consumer code will be calling to this get instance. So it seems as you can see here, you have two words. So I will rename this just to provide a shorthand for it. So get it, and then I'm going to call it like, you can call whatever here. Maybe you want to call it like Locator or DI, but here I use the name just I'm going to call it like service and get it dot instance. Okay, so this one I can simply replace with service, okay, because we have make it as a shorthand here. Oh, it's not I, but it is lower I. Okay, so we're done with this registration. This is only to register, right? Okay, now how to consume this? Okay, when we look back here, the consumer code access the dependency via the service locator. Okay, we don't access directly to the dependency, but we ask the service locator. Okay, because by doing that, we have some extra features whereby you have the option for singleton or factory approach, right? So it depends on the way you registered your dependency. It will tell the service locator how to create or how it gives you the instance. Okay, if it is registered as factory, then it will create you a new instance every time you call to the service locator. Okay, now this is done. The next part is that because this is only we only define, right? In fact, we don't actually start doing the registration because we don't execute the init. To some extent, we need to execute this init. So where should we put this init? Okay, so because here the purpose of this part is only to execute. The purpose of this init is only for doing the registration. Okay, where should we put this? So we are going to execute this when the program start running. So in order to do that, we are going to go to the main, right? In the main. So now, because this is arrow function, I need to add more lines here. So I need to split this into compound statement. Okay, then here actually I want to use init. Okay, so where does this init come from? We cannot get the suggestion here. Why is that? Because we need to import. I'm going to import. Do we have dependencies dot? Then to make it more readable. Okay, because I don't know which init is this. Okay, so we are going to do that. We are going to alias this. Okay, let's say I call this like di, whatever. You can do any alias. So I'm going to call di, which stands for dependency injection. So di.init. So this is actually the part that do the actual registration. Okay, so this is very important step. If you forgot to do this, your application still can run. However, when you start, when the consumer code start accessing the dependencies, you got error. Why? Because your service locator doesn't know the dependencies, because you didn't register yet. It's not because you didn't write the code. The code has been written, but you didn't run the init. Okay. Okay. What else? Okay. Now let us go to the consumer code. Okay. Let's go to the consumer code. The consumer code is inside the screen, the to-do list screen. Okay. What we are going to do here, so this is the original one, right? The original code, which is using the global one. So let me delete this, okay, because just now is the global one. So now here we need this screen need to do data service, right? We need data service here. So we are going to use this one. Consumer code access the dependencies via the service locator. We are going to write this code. Okay, we are asking the service locator to give us the data service. Okay, so just now I remove this, okay, because this one is a global approach, right? This is the problem. So now let's remove this one. Now we no longer have this to do data service. So that's why here we need to okay, this is how you tell the key point here. Actually, we want to ask the service locator, give me this data service. Okay, you simply want to write something like this, okay, which is this service is the name that you declare here. Okay. Okay, by the way, this is actually also, besides as an object, it's also a callable function. Okay. Let us go back here. Okay, now. Okay, so now I'm going to use this variable. Okay, we are going to do something like this. Give me service. But what service? We don't know what the service. The way you want to tell this is by specifying the service for this guy. So this is actually the service for to do. This is the class for to do. Data service. Okay, what is the service we registered just now? Yeah, this one. Okay, why we need to do that? Because you don't see here, because in this example I just show you only one dependency. In actuality, in actual application, you will be having several dependencies here. You need to register several. So in order to tell the service locator which service you are requesting, is by specifying the class. Okay, this one. Okay, and then again we get error here. Why? Because we need to import first dependency, which is for the service, and also this class coming from to do data service rest. Okay, Now, but still we have errors somewhere else because we didn't change yet. So the same goes to this one. Okay, we need dependency for this. So again, for this case, we just replicate the code. Okay, what is it? Where is it? Okay, to-do list, to-do data service. Okay, let me check why is this happening. Okay, just now I was getting a really strange errors. Then I needed to to refresh my VS Code. Okay, I'm not really sure the exact cause of the problem, but it is most likely I forgot to to remove this line. Okay, and I also use the same name here, to do data service. So if you get the same errors as mine, then what you need to do, you just remove this line. Okay, because this one is actually the implementation from the previous method. So I remove this, and also, and then to be safe, I simply change all the variable to do data service here into, I replace all this into data service. Okay, I call it data service. And then okay, now let's go back here. Let's proceed. So this consumer, this is we are going to do for this getting the list of to-dos. So we need the dependency, which is the service. We get the service via the service locator. Okay, I'm using this name service, but service here is actually just the, this is my service locator, which is where is it? I need to go to my file. Okay, I need to go to my file. Where is it? Why I cannot get my, okay, I don't see my, okay, let me Control P, open dependency. Okay, this one. Okay, I'm using this name service. Okay, I'll use my service locator. Then here, okay, so this is actually how you ask the service locator to get the service. So you simply call service here, and then this service needs to know what service that you want it to locate for you. Okay, the way you want to tell the service locator is by telling it the class type. Okay, so in this case we don't tell the class type explicitly, okay, but it will infer implicitly by looking at the type of this variable. Okay, the type of this data service. Since we are declaring as to do data service, that means this service will go to the service locator just now. Okay, here, but in our case it doesn't matter because we only have, in our case we only have one dependency registered here, which is to do data service. Okay, let's proceed. Okay, now the rest of the code we still get errors here because we don't fix that yet. Okay, by the way, because this one we are not going to change it, right? So it's common practice to make it as a final. So now we are going to do the same for the rest of this one. As you can see here, this is also requires the dependency data service. Where is the data service? We get from here. Okay, data service rest. I forgot, this one is supposed to be to do data service REST. Okay, and also this one, data service. Okay, okay, again, this is, I think this one is for the plus button, and also, okay, it also needs this data service, so we grab from here. Okay, it's supposed to be working. Okay, there is no error now. And then, oh, I have class data service. I need to delete. What is this? Let me check what. Okay, I need to delete. Then let's try to hot restart. Okay, so it works fine here. Okay, so that means up to this point I have shown you how to register your dependencies in Service Locator, and then here we consume, or we access the dependencies via the Service Locator by simply calling to service. Okay, during this time we need to tell this Service Locator what service that actually we want to access. The way we do it is basically by providing the type of the service. And here, what we did here is basically by using the implicit. Okay, the Service Locator will infer during based on the type of this data. So we can also actually provide explicit. So I can rewrite this. Okay, I will show you another syntax. Okay, this one. Okay, let's say another way, data service. So it doesn't work. Okay, because service actually it accept generic. Okay, you can tell here something like this. This is the same. This is the same, that the one that, okay, let me copy this, revert. Okay, so this is the first approach I showed you just now, and this is the second one. This is the same. So we literally mention here, okay, a Service Locator get me an object which of type to do data service REST. Okay, you can do it in this way, you can do in another way, in this way as well. Okay, either one. Okay, now so what else I need to show you here? Okay, so you might notice there will be some problem with this, right? What if I want to switch, or I want to swap the service, the data service here from REST to mock data REST. Okay, to mock data service. So the only way I can do for now here is that, okay, I need to go to, let's say I want to switch this into the mock data service. So I need to go to my dependencies. Then I need to change here. Of course, you need to change here, which is you need to I change here to mock, and then here also I change to mock. Okay, now when I go to the to-do list screen, is supposed to be not working anymore, because we here requesting the to-do data service REST, but we don't have to-do data service REST. What we have, to-do data service mock. Okay, in the only to-do data service mock registered in Service Locator. So of course I also need to change here. Okay, So mock. Okay, again, what else? Then we use our replace all here, Control H, replace all to do data service mock. Okay, replace all. Let me see. Of course, I will currently I'm showing you this is a problem. Basically, you don't see a big problem here because just only one file. So what if, okay, by the way, meanwhile, let's this program execute. Oh, I got error. Okay, let's see the problem. Okay, when we read this, if you can read from the error here, the error shows that no type to do data service mock is registered. It's quite weird, right? Because just now we registered where's my dependency here, right? To do mock. But why this error happened? Because we registered but we didn't execute init. This is my guess for this, because the init is execute at the beginning of the main. So I think we need to stop the program and then rerun it again. Okay, so to allow the init take an effect. Okay, so let's wait for this to complete. Okay, it works now. Okay, just now the problem because we have changed the code but we didn't run the init. Okay, the init can only be run when you start, when you need to restart the application, the run of the application. Okay, so now currently we are running with this with mock data service. Okay, so as you can see here, then what if I want to change again back to the rest? So I keep doing changing the code here, right? So you notice here this kind of approach. Okay, for this code currently is actually doesn't fulfill the two parts or two principles from Solid, which is the open close, if you can recall, open close principle. Here just now, if I want to change my data service, then I need to change the code. That one violate the principle of open close, right? We are changing the code here. And then most importantly, it also violates the dependency inversion. Okay, dependency inversion. The reason being why we need to change the code in that way if we want to change the data service, because of we didn't fulfill that the last one just now, dependency inversion. Okay, so what the dependency inversion tells us in the solid principle, which is the last principle, the D part in the solid principle, the way you want to achieve that principle is that your code supposed to be relying on abstraction rather than concrete classes. Just now we are relying, or this code relies on, as you can see here, the concrete class. Okay, concrete class mock. If I need to change this to rest, then I need to use concrete class rest. Okay, so now we are going to refactor this application so that we can fulfill the last principle, the dependency inversion, whereby we are going to let our code relies on abstracts rather than the concrete class. So let's do that, and then let's see how Gedit can help us in order to achieve that. Okay, first of all, what I need to do is that I need to do some changes on my concrete classes, which is the to do service rest and also to do. Let me close this first. Dependency, I will open this later because I need more screen. Okay, I think yeah, I can get another screen here. Open. Let me open let me open another this one is to do service mock. Okay, to do data service mock. Okay, let me put here so that we can see side by side. As you can see here, to do data service rest and to do. Okay, maybe I can open side by side, right, so that we can see that we can compare them. Okay, let me open side by side. Okay, so we have to do data service rest and then to do data service mock. So they are actually doing the same thing, but the implementation is different. What I mean by the same thing, which is all the functionality here is the same. Okay, like you have get to do list, we have get to do list. Okay, we have get to do list. Okay, and the same. Okay, however, the implementation is different. Why? Because for the to-do rest, it relies on the REST service, which basically it does the actual REST API call. It is using actual REST call. And for the mock data, as the name implies, is a mock. The function is the same. However, we implement, so for example, in order to get the to-do list, we simply get from the internal data, okay, whereby to-do database is hard-coded one, this one. This is normally actually how you provide your fact data, okay. So don't get confused. Fact data, the one that you randomly created, that one is also a fact data. But what I mean here is the data you normally used to facilitate the operation. So for example, maybe this one, normally you want to use this kind of fact data when you are doing testing on your application, because you don't want to test the rest. You just want to, let's say you just want to test your business logic, okay, but you don't want to include the network call. So the way you want to do it is simply something like that. Create internal data. Okay, so here I introduce next ID because I want to implement the same what JSON server is implementing. Whenever you add a new data, then you increase the ID by 1, okay, something like that. Okay, now let refactor this, okay, because these two classes are, we call it concrete classes because they have the actual implementation. So we need to generalize this. We are going to create an abstract class from here. So let me create a class. Okay, so we are going to create a class inside, okay, inside a service. Here inside a service, and then we are going to create a new class. Where is it? No, I forgot that one. Where is it? This one. Let's call this to do data service dot. Okay, here is, this is just a concrete an abstract class. So what I can do, I just copy this. Okay, okay, why this guy is here? Okay, and then paste here. So here we just need to create the an abstract class. Make this an abstract class, and then we call this as to do data service. Okay, to do data service. Okay, I forgot to mention. Okay, as you can see here, there are special implementation here. This is actually how you implement singleton in Dart. Okay, we use this approach in the first dependency injection method I showed you in the beginning of this video. Okay, whereby we need to do it the singleton explicitly. Okay, but since we use Gedit, and then Gedit already implemented the Gedit package has already have the singleton feature, so we no longer need this option, we no longer need this code, so we can simply remove this singleton part. That also applies to the other two classes, which is to do data service REST and to do data service mock. Okay, now here what we need here is only the okay, it's only this because we are going to create an abstract class. An abstract class only needs the header, right? So we simply remove the body, something like that. Okay. We just need to have the list of functions or the list of APIs that this class should provide. Okay. Okay, we're done. So of course we no longer need this one. Okay, and then for the actual service, the concrete class, for the concrete class, we need to implement the abstract class. Okay, implement the to do data service. Okay, so this is basically if you can recall from the object-oriented programming, this is actually we are dealing with interface. Okay, however, that doesn't provide dedicated keyword for interface, but we can simply use the abstract class to deal with interface, to create interface. Okay, I need to import this. Undefined. Okay, so that means I need to import manually. So the way I'm going to do it is something like import. Okay, it's supposed to be inside to do. Yeah, we have here to do data service, this one. Okay, okay, now again here I no longer need this. This is because the implementation for the singleton, you don't have to implement singleton here, because later on the singleton features will be handled, or singleton operation will be handled by the Gedit. Okay, because we are going to register this class as singleton, so Gedit will help us to make sure only once instance is created from this class. Okay, so I remove everything. Where is it? This one. Oh, yeah, up to this point, because we need rest. Okay, we need rest. What else we need here? Okay, so again, I think we're done with this. Now let's move on to the mock. I think I need the mock dependency. Okay, we need mock. I open the mock, this one. Okay, again, so here we need to implement the to do data service. Okay, this is an abstract class, and then we import okay, we just borrow from here, which is this one. I don't know why my IntelliSync doesn't work very well here. Okay, now we finish, and then of course we also no longer need this the singleton part. Okay, I think we're done with this. Okay, done. So now let's move on to how to implement the dependency injection by using Gedit. Okay, so I hope you can notice the problem that we faced just now. If we need to change the dependency, you need to change your code all over the place, right? Just now we just have one file, which is to-do list screen. But what if you have more than one file? So you need to change your code all over the place. So this is I will show you how to overcome that kind of problem. Okay, that kind of situation. So now let's move on to the to-do list. Okay, I believe okay, to-do list screen. Okay, now so let's now we have three classes, right? The first one is the abstract class, and then we have two other classes which is meant for concrete classes, right? So how to register? Do you need to register everything? Okay, but before we do the registration, let's go to the consumer code, which is in to-do list screen, right? Okay, as you already notice here, this is actually the problem. Okay? We rely on concrete class. This is not a good practice. Of course, it violates the principle of dependency inversion. So in dependency inversion, instead of relying on the concrete class, we realize this code supposed to be relying on abstract. So here we don't use concrete whether mock or rest, but we simply use the abstract class. Okay, because this is only for actually to facilitate the compilation, because compilation only needs to know what function that this service need to have. It doesn't need to know the implementation details. Okay, so that's why it's by using the abstract class is good enough for this one. Okay, then here now we can change this to just to do service. Okay, just to do service, which is also an abstract class. Okay, and then of course I need to, because just now okay we need to change our code. I think we have here. Okay, we need to change here. We also the same. Okay, let's try this. Also the same. Okay, again, I hope you can recall you have this option to request for dependencies. You declare something like this, or you can use explicitly, you put something here, right? Okay, but we just remain the code that we have so far. Okay, okay, what else? Okay, now we finished this the consumer part. How about the registration? Let's go to the registration. Okay, here as you can tell, here, okay, we request the service locator to give us the to-do data service. But when we go to to-do data service, when we go to the service locator here, okay, we don't have any registration to-do data service, but what we have is to-do service mocks. So you might be thinking, why don't we do it something like this, right? Okay, and then of course here, so it works fine, right? But it doesn't work. Why? Because this is an abstract class. You cannot create an instance from abstract class, right? So luckily the service locator provide us to work around on this issue, on this problem. So what you want to do here is actually we provide here, because it supports generate. Okay, this is generate. Okay, you provide the things that you want to register. Okay, here normally you put your abstraction here, your abstract class name here, and then here you provide, okay, and then of course since we are using this, you also need to include this, right? You need to include the data service. Then what you okay, so this is actually this tells the service locator, okay, whenever the consumer requests for to do data service, then what you need to give to the caller or the consumer. So depending what you specify here. So for example here, I'm going to currently, okay, let's see our currently we are using the mock one, right? Okay, I want to change that using the rest. Okay, so since I use rest here, then I need to also call this rest. Okay, so when we go here, so this code implies the the Gedit package help us to implement the dependency inversion. Okay, so whereby in our code here we don't write any actual or any concrete implementation. What we refer here is abstract class. Okay, so how it works? Okay, so here we write this code. Okay, we tell that, okay, so service locator, please give me an instance of class from to do data service. Okay, so the way service locator locate that is by looking the type. So it looks here, the consumer request to do data service, so it match this one, then it gives whatever you put here. Okay, so let's try to run this. Okay, currently we have this, right? Okay, let me pause and then wait for the compilation complete. Okay, now the compilation has completed. Then let's, as you can see here, so now we change the dependency from the mock one to rest. Okay, by changing only this centralized part, central registry. So I just need to change this part. Okay, only this part. Okay, I don't have to change my code all over the place. So it's very important to use abstraction in order to achieve this kind of scenario. Okay, so here we don't rely on the concrete class, but we rely on the abstraction. So if I want to change this to currently is the the rest one, right? Okay, if I want to change back to mock, I simply change here, only one place. Okay, this one, mock. Okay, so when we run, and then it's supposed to be getting the result from mock. Okay, so as you can see here, this is actually the implementation of the solid principle. Okay, so you might be noticing here, so whenever you want to achieve this solid principle of the D principle from solid, okay, when you when you create a dependency, okay, something like, you at least need to create two classes. Okay, the mask, the one is the mask one, which is the abstract class. Create an abstract class. Okay, so for example, just now we have just now we have data service, right? So you need to create data service abstract, and then implement the abstract class for variations of concrete classes. So here I just showed you only two use cases, like mock, and then maybe you need rest. Maybe you also want to implement with, let's say, Firebase, so you keep implementing different concrete classes. Okay, so that's the idea. So as for small application, it's quite overkill. Why? Because every time you want to register a service, you need to at least to provide two classes. Okay, you must have the abstract class, okay, because we want to do something like this, which is let me show you, make it larger. This one you need to have here when you register, for the purpose of locating the service or the dependency, you register here as the abstract, okay, abstract class, but you give the actual instance with the concrete class, something like this. Okay, I think that's all about dependency inversion, okay, using Gedit. But I still need to show you something else here. Okay, let's take a look in our REST. As you can see here, this is also a dependency, right? You can also use a dependency injection. Let's say, what if you want to use Gedit for this case? So I can register this. I can go here. Okay, I register Lazy Singleton, of course. Okay, for now, for simplicity, I don't need to change. I don't need to have the abstract class. I register it as REST. The REST service. So the REST service is from where is it? Do I have REST service? Oh, so I need to do it here, which is the REST service. Okay, done. Now I can consume this in my here in my, okay, I can do it something like this. Okay, I will call something like this, REST, and then service, and then this service is service locator, which is, where is my service locator? I need to import from here. My service locator is inside, I think, where is it? Do I have here? Service locator. Maybe I need to Oh, where is it? Dependency. Where is my dependency? Dependency. This one. Okay, but it's supposed to be, I think it's supposed to be, currently I am here, dependency, yeah, because we want to use service, right? Now, as you can see, this is one of the application. We register, we register all our dependency in a central place. So okay, let me try to run this, make sure it can run. Oh, I forgot, this is still mockup, so we need to change the this part to rest. In fact, if you notice, I keep switching my screen because I want to make sure the recording is is running. Because I sometimes pause the video. Okay, so this one I need to change this to rest. Okay, and then rest. Okay, we run it again. Okay, wait for this to complete. Okay, as you can see here, the result is the same. Okay, what else I can show you here? Okay, so just now what I did, actually I centralized the creation of instance in service locator. Okay, we register service. We can go further. So let's say I also want to, okay, let us try to register this screen, okay, rather than the service itself. Let me okay, this is actually I will let me try this. Okay, hopefully it can work. So what I'm going to do is I want to register this screen. Okay, I'm going to register this screen to service locator. Okay, so I'm going to have this, and then I will put under here. Okay, I will put here, and then what is it? Oh, maybe I just need to okay. Oh, because I have to double cursor. Okay, I put here. Okay, now this one, okay, I want to register this. Okay, this by the way, I need to call this. Where is this class? I'm not sure what happened with my my data path. It cannot grasp the path correctly, so I need to import manually here, which is, I think this is from here, and then we have the screen, and then the screen is to-do list. Okay, I want to register this one, but here we are not going to register as singleton. Instead, we are going to register it register as factory. Okay, register it as factory. Why? Because maybe you want to create to-do list screen multiple times. Okay, so let's try this. Then how to consume this? So because the to-do list screen is consumed by the main. Let's go to main. Okay, here, this one. Okay, this what we are going to do here. Okay, we simply need to just now we register this, right? Okay, where is it? Okay, we register this to-do list screen. Okay, in the main. Okay, so to-do list screen Okay, let's say we call it like, maybe I'm going to call this like my screen equal to the service, okay, and then here we call to my screen. Okay, why is it, what is going on? Oh yeah, this is because we use alias here, so we can use bi dot service. Yeah, okay, let's try to run. Okay, by the way, to make sure it works, let's change this to the res. Here we use res, or change it back to mock. Oh, okay, change back this to mock. Okay, in fact I can change, just to make sure it works, I can change only the color, but never mind, since I already changed here. Okay, so okay, let me hot restart. Oh, I think we need to stop the program because we changed in the main. I don't think so it will work, so let me okay, let me stop this program first. Okay, as you can see, it still use the res. Okay, okay, we are going to run it again, and then I will stop the video. I will pause the video. Okay, it works fine, it works the same. So just now I showed you how to register. You can register anything actually in the service locator. Okay, service locator is quite useful for making our code much more readable, and I think more compact in terms of writing the code, instead of using some other methods, some other approach for dependency injection. And then of course we are going to use this with combination with provider. We later in the actual implementation for our MBBM, we are going mostly most of the time we are going for dependency injection, we are going to use Gedit, okay, as our dependency injection package. Then we are going to combine with provider. Okay, so most of the time the one that we registered for dependencies normally services. Okay, and then just now I was mentioning regarding we are going to use global approach, because Gedit is global approach, but we need to use it in a control manner. So besides making it making the dependency centralized, what I would suggest you, if you want to use this approach, you don't use global approach for dependencies that that have state. Okay, so what I mean by that, so just now data service, we don't have state, right? We just have operation, get to do list. You don't need to store information about the list of to dos, because our operation only do the actual operation, do the task. Okay, the caller will be organizing the data retrieved from that particular task. But some services like authentication, right? So authentication has state. So like whenever you log in, authentication has several steps. First of all, whether the user has login. If the user has login, then you need to know who is the user, right? So in order to know that, you need to store the information. So where you put the information, most likely you will be storing inside the service, right? Because it is much easier to work with, and then it is more logical to do so because user and authentication service interrelated to each other. So you most likely to put the user or the stat inside the service. Okay, so in that case, in our implementation later, we are not going to implement the authentication service and then we put inside the get it, because get it is a global variable. We try to avoid using global variable or global scope variables or global access that consists of or that contains state. Okay, so to work around with that situation is we are going to combine it with inherited widget dependency injection. But we are not going to use inherited widget, but instead we are going to use the advanced version of inherited widget, which is the provider. Okay, because just now I mentioned provider, besides a state management, provider also supports for dependency injection. And then the way provider works is similar to inherited widget because it is based on inherited widget. Okay, something like that. Okay, I think that's all I need to show you from. So what we learned so far in this video, we learned about dependency injection. We learn about what is dependency and then what is injection. So it's just basically a catchy term to tell how to provision dependency to your code, right? And then we have seen several ways of doing dependency injection, particularly in Flutter framework, starting from the global approach, and then we have constructor injection, and then we have the inherited widget, and finally we learn about the service locator, the one that we are going to utilize later in our next video. Okay, I hope you have learned something from this lecture video. Okay, bye.